Minecraft takes place on Jupiter, and I can prove it. Except for the fact that I can't prove it because it's a lie to get your attention. What I can, however, tell you is that the strength of gravity in Minecraft is comparable to that of Jupiter's. Now, why do we even care about this? We probably don't. But I cared about it, so I set up an experiment and proved it. And if you only care about the result, you already have it. The strength of gravity in Minecraft is similar to that of Jupiter's. And you can Google that. You can Google the strength of gravity in Jupiter, and you can get a nice little numeric on that. So, go. What are you waiting for? Done and dusted. Except, of course, it isn't. Because what I think is much more interesting than just this end result is how we got there, the process that went behind this. So, if you care about that, stick around, because that's what the video's about. Now, before we dive right into the experiment, let's talk about gravity. In the real world, when we jump, we fall. Nothing crazy there. But what might be a little bit crazier, although you probably have experiences, in fact, I can guarantee you have experienced this, unless you've never jumped or fallen, you actually speed up. You are accelerated towards the ground. And this happens at a rate of 10 meters per second, which is to say, for every single second that you fall, you are going to be traveling 10 meters a second faster than you were in that previous second. But that's the real world. Let's take a look over to Minecraft. When we jump in Minecraft, just like in the real world, we do fall. Now, this isn't to say that Minecraft is the real world, of course, but at least it has something that acts like gravity within the code. But does this gravity act the same way as it does in the real world? And if it does, how strong is this gravity? These are all things that I was wondering. Now, if I was a wiser man, I would have just gone into the code of Minecraft, found the lines of code where it talks about how strong gravity is and gone, haha, there you go, we have an answer, it's all coded in. Unfortunately, I don't know how to do that. So instead, I decided to go the old-fashioned way. I set up an experiment to investigate this. So now we can dive right into the experiment. And the experiment was a simple one. I built a series of pillars, jumped off them, and timed the falls. Now, in reality, this turned out to be a lot less simple than it sounds. I'd seen that a lot of other people have actually tried this experiment before. People have gotten values for the strength of gravity in Minecraft. Unfortunately, they're all different, and looking at how they gather their data, I don't trust them. It's prone to errors, misinterpretation, and mistakes. I managed to identify 3 key problems with other people's experiments. So, without further ado, here are the problems I identified and the solutions and the steps that I took to make sure that it didn't affect my results. Problem 1, not enough data. If you don't have enough data, then tiny mistakes and errors will skew your results massively. As such, I created 8 pillars to jump off, from 10 blocks to 80 blocks. So I had one at 10, 20, 30, etc. On top of that, I jumped off each pillar 3 times, giving a total of 24 falls. Now, very importantly, this allowed me to compare results from falls of the same height and also compare falls of different heights. Problem 2, inaccurate timing. A fall from 10 blocks takes less than 1 second to happen. A fall from 150 blocks takes less than 4 seconds to happen. These timings are tiny, so even a small inaccuracy or error in your timing is going to affect your results massively. A stopwatch will not cut it. Human reaction time will not cut it. So, to alleviate this problem, I recorded every single fall and then went through them frame by frame to calculate how long they took. Problem 3. When does your fall start and end? This is really a continuation of problem 2. If you want to time the fall accurately, you have to know exactly when you start falling and exactly when you hit the ground. And to the human eye in Minecraft, that isn't particularly clear. As such, I set up a system to make it clear. The first thing that I did is that I didn't simply jump off the pillar or walk off the pillar. I created a system with redstone, the game's electricity, to push me off the edge. I had something called a piston push me off. So when I was looking through it frame by frame, I could find the exact frame that the piston was fully extended and then start my timing from there. Likewise, I set up a system that when I hit the ground, a light would turn on in-game. As such, I could simply look in my recording for the second the light turned on, and I would know exactly where to stop going through frame by frame. So I could get very accurate times for each of the falls. Now, it might actually be a game bug where the light turns on a little bit before you truly hit the floor, or maybe you do start falling before the piston is fully extended. But because I did this same thing for every single result, it will skew every single result the same way. As such, when I go to graph them out, this will move the graph, but it won't change the shape. So all analysis is still fair game. With these three key problems addressed, I now felt that I was ready to actually start taking data, and once I got that data, I would be confident that it would be accurate and something that I could really analyze to get a result. Before we analyze the data that we got, let's return to the real world and talk about gravity. Now, luckily for us, when we fall, there is a beautiful equation that sort of predicts the fall for us, and that equation goes as such: S equals ut plus half gt squared. Now, this equation might seem a little bit scary, but don't worry, it is much more simple than you think. S is the displacement, aka the height that you're falling from. So in our case, it's how tall our pillars were. U is the speed at which you're falling initially. Now, we were just pushed off, so in our case, U is actually 0, so that term cancels out. So now we're left with S equals half gt squared. Well, a half is a half, g is the strength of gravity, what we're trying to find, and t, well, that's going to be the time of the fall. Knowing that our initial falling speed was 0, we can plot a graph of the height we were falling from versus not the time, but the time it took squared. And this should give us a straight line where the steepness of that line is the strength of gravity. Now, this only applies if gravity in Minecraft actually does work in the same way that gravity works in the real world. If we plot this and we don't get a straight line, or something that somewhat resembles a straight line, then we are in big trouble and we're going to have to rethink everything. Luckily for us, plotting the data actually does give us a straight line, which is brilliant because number one, it implies that gravity in Minecraft works the same way that gravity does in the real world. And, well, what's brilliant about this is it means I don't have to think anymore. So I took this straight line looking-esque thing, plugged it into a Python code that will find the line of best fit, then calculated the gradient of that line, and we got that the strength of gravity is 20.236 blocks per second squared. Now, I didn't say meters per second squared, I said blocks per second squared, because of course the measurement unit that we're using here is blocks. But if we assume that a block is a meter, which I believe is a standard assumption for the game, the strength of gravity in Minecraft is 20.236 meters per second squared, which, compared to the strength of gravity on Earth, which is 9.81 meters per second squared, is over 2 times as strong. It's actually a little bit less than the gravity of Jupiter, which means at the start of the video, I did not only lie to you once, but I've lied to you twice. But there we go. We have ourselves a result. But having a result is child's play. Anybody can get a result. What is important is whether your result is correct. To find this result, I was doing falls between 10 blocks and 80 blocks tall. So I decided to not use a fall within that range to check my answer, but instead a fall from 150 blocks, a height that's very far outside of the range that I used. So this should be a fairly good test. I ran the calculations with the value of g, this 20.236. I ran the calculations with that value and found that theoretically the fall should take about 3.87 seconds from 150 blocks, which, by the way, a fall from 150 meters, 3.87 seconds, that is very fast. But that speaks to the fact that the acceleration value, the strength of gravity, is so great. I did this fall twice, and I got times of 3.95 seconds and 3.876 seconds, incredibly close to the theoretical value. Now, I could probably check some more, but honestly, at this point, I'm happy. We have a value. It does very accurate predictions. What more could I possibly ask for? Well, what I could ask for is what are the implications of this stronger gravity, of this gravity that's almost 2 times that of Earth? Steve is still jumping in this gravity, so how strong must that man's legs be to overcome this double force? On top of that, I've seen lots of videos on YouTube talking about how strong Steve is. You know, they're saying, okay, he can carry an inventory full of shulker boxes all filled with golden apples, so he's going to be really, really strong because they, you know, take blocks of gold to craft. But on top of that, they are all miscalculating because they're not taking into account that gravity is double as strong as they are assuming it to be. So really, he's carrying double that effective weight because all of those things are being pushed towards the ground with a double as strong force. And if that's something that you want to see, please do comment and maybe I will. And one final thing that I could ask for is for all of you to like and subscribe. This is my first YouTube video, so I do feel very official YouTuber-esque being able to say that, but please do if you want to see more. If you don't, then obviously don't. I can't make you, unfortunately. But alas, that's the end of this, and I'll see you all next time.